Today's guest comes to us from France. Jo Cowper is here because she is a leading expert in brand voice development. She helps businesses find their unique voice to connect authentically. We've talked about this with their audience. Today, we're going to talk to her about fostering that connection and also why she feels like running up and down mountains is quote unquote fun. I don't get it either. Stay tuned. So, Jo, you mentioned, like when we've emailed back and forth in that, you've mentioned that you have a passion for the mountains, especially the Alps. What about them just said, this is home to you?
That's a really good question. It's something about the profile of the mountains against the sky. You arrive in the Alps and, well, where I live, it's just underneath Mont Blanc. And so if you're driving on the motorway towards my house, you come around a certain corner and you just see the silhouette of Mont Blanc there in front of you. And it's just like, magic. And you just feel like, I don't want to be anywhere else. Absolutely. There's something about it. I mean, sometimes I'll go back home to my original home back in the UK and I think, oh, it's really nice here. It's very familiar. It's very cozy. And then I come back to France like, wow, this is where I want to be.
So you just see it, and it's I've seen pictures. I've watched the Tour de France as they go through the French Alps, and I think that is majestic and amazing. And you get to wake up to that.
I do. Do you know the Tour de France had their race base directly outside my house for 3 days last year? So yeah, we see all of that kind of stuff. It's amazing.
Very cool. I have some friends that will be jealous of that. So, I mean, you do things a bit differently when it comes to like the brand voice and that, because your focus is on authentic business owners. And I mean, per the quote on the site is authentic business owners who want to build their success on their own terms and entrepreneurs who are tired of being to follow someone else's recipe. There's a reason that you go there. So what made you say, this is the spot? It's that authentic, go your own way thing.
Because I think it's very easy to find a lot of information about how to do certain things in business, or how to do marketing, how to do building a brand, how you must or should do this, that, and the other, all of the many things that need to be on your list of things to do. But typically we don't start businesses because we want to follow a whole lot of procedures and because we want to become professional marketers, unless that happens to be the business that we're starting. We start the business because we want to make an impact and we want to be able to deliver the service or the product, the thing that we're passionate. We want to make a difference, right? And second point, it is undoubtedly the case that no matter what you're selling in your business, there will be a fair bit of marketing to be done, and at times it will feel like hard work. So if you give yourself a job of work doing forms of marketing, forms of selling that you absolutely hate, then typically your business is going to become a bit of a chore and perhaps not have a super long lifespan because you have given yourself a very significant part of your day-to-day work that you dislike. Now, I believe it's not only is it not necessary, but it's not constructive, because if you're great at doing something, which you certainly are if you've gone so far as to start a business doing it, then the ideal is to make the way that you market your business as close as it possibly can be to the way that you actually deliver your work and run your business.
That's I love that, because it really does. It speaks to that. Do with what you're good at and what you love, and go with it. It's a great niche to be in, rather than just forcing the square peg in the round hole, which a lot of us. Yeah. That's speaking of stuff like that. You have a degree in English literature and a career in marketing. How do those, they seem not opposite of each other, but they seem not like a direct fit. How do those work together?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I absolutely credit my study of English literature, because I have a master's in English literature, done a fair bit of study of Irish poetry and dug into all of the meanings and the hidden narratives. And I absolutely believe that the ability to unpick the narrative beneath the narrative is absolutely the same ability that you need when you look at your business and think, what is it really all about? Underneath all the stuff that I've layered on top of it, all of the hard work that I've given myself to do, all the people who I felt I need to imitate, what actually is my business all about? What's the thing, the common thread that runs through? What's the meaning? And in my experience, and so another point, a lot of the study of English literature is about understanding what people are really saying, what do they really mean. Now, fundamentally, the study of marketing is about understanding what are customers really saying, what do they really mean. And so it's about understanding what is the true message. It's about human behavior. And in that respect, I go back to that practice of deconstructing, of pulling together, joining dots, and thinking, right, what's actually going on here, to dig deeper into the business in order to then bring the right stuff to the surface.
So that's a big piece of it then, is working with people to say, okay, what's that second or third level down driver that's really kind of the driver behind all of it, instead of just like what a guru's told them?
Yes. And often it's difficult for people to find that, because it's much easier, I think, to understand what's going on with somebody else based on what they say and the signs they may give away, the things they may do, than it is to understand what's going on in yourself. And so I'll tend to act as that mirror with the people I work with. I'll listen, hear what they say, and then query. You said this, but you looked like this. You said that, but then you said this other thing. And these two things, they don't go together. And so we can begin to really find where the cracks and fissures are. And then we can begin to find out, okay, actually, the reason I'm not enjoying building this part of my business, or the reason I'm not enjoying doing this particular form of marketing, is because it fundamentally opposes who I am, or because it's not what I came here to do. I was copycatting something else. And so once we strip away all of those things, we can come down normally to something much simpler and more essential.
That makes wonderful sense with that. That really does. And it's getting it down to simple, because you mentioned something else, is that you said overthinking it is a common challenge people face. I mean, when it comes to like their marketing and their brand voice, what's one or two things that someone like surface level can just look at to be like, look, am I overthinking my brand voice?
Well, it's very, very common to overthink your brand voice, because you think that you're supposed to be something, or you're supposed to be a certain way. Effectively, you're not supposed to be any way other than the way that you are. And so the minute that you start thinking, what do people need to see from me? It's a valid question, but the first question is, what really am I? And so the way that I'll always approach a brand voice or a brand strategy project is not to look out and see what are all the options, what do all my customers want from me. You look inward first to say, what are all the things that I authentically am? And then there's a kind of matching job to be done. And so we can match what you authentically are with what's actually relevant out of that, because there'll be many things that are not at all relevant to your future clients. And then there's a third piece, which is all about what else is out there in their world, what's normal for them. And so we can then pick and choose to create the right mix of standing out and fitting in, because a combination of those two elements is usually helpful. You don't want to stand out so far that you're out of the park and nobody knows what it is that you're all about and what you do. You've got a huge communications job to do. You don't want to fit in so much that you're just vanilla and nobody can tell you from anybody else.
So I can tell that there is a lot of thought and planning that has gone into this, but in a base level, there's always a piece where there's an aha moment. Where did that happen for you, where you're like, oh, this is how I should be doing this, not this way? Was there a moment where you could be like, okay, this is when I started to pivot or started to see around the corner?
Yeah, I remember going to a workshop back in, I would say it would be the early 2000s, maybe 2000, 2001, something like that, about brand. I'd never heard of brand at this time, though. I had no idea that it was anything more than a logo. And when I went to this workshop, the guy there, he explained what brand is really all about. And he had this analogy that meant a lot to me at the time, but I found that it means less and less to people as years go on. It was about the time when Skoda cars were taken over by Volkswagen cars. And Skoda cars, for many people who don't remember that Skodas were not always a fantastic make of car, it used to be they were kind of an object of division. Skoda, and the whole thing changed. Now, it didn't change because they changed the bodywork. It changed because they changed the engine. They changed what was inside. And so it was powered by a Volkswagen engine. And that's what all the fancy bodywork and all of the sort of representation, if you like, of Skoda sat upon. Not just some kind of, we're going to buy it and now we're going to say it's good. Before it was bad, now it's good. You can't do that. It doesn't work. I actually saw a similar, the opposite thing done in a publishing context, where you take one book, you put a different cover on it, you sell it as a different book. Obviously, it doesn't work. Right? If you want to sell it under a different cover, the cover needs to match the book. The thing has to be consistent. And that was a real moment of clarity for me, that marketing isn't just kind of sleazy sales and sell anything at any cost. The real point of marketing is to represent the thing as it authentically is, in a way that will connect with the people who would actually enjoy it if they bought it.
I love the book analogy. That's amazing. Because, I mean, we've all opened stuff up and you see this nice flashy cover and then you start reading and you're like, oh, this was done on the reading level of a 10-year-old. On some days that may work for me, but not all the time. It does. There's days where a 10-year-old reading level is all my brain has left. I was going to ask, I mean, since you moved to France, I mean, I'm assuming you speak French reasonably well. What was it like to learn that? Yeah. And I mean, what's it like to learn that? And then, I mean, how does that make it for your business that you're able to connect with people wherever they are, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, actually. I do conduct all of my business in the English language. I conduct all my life in the French language, but all my business in the English language, rather. And that's because I think the key to building an effective business, obviously, a successful business, is to make really strong connections with the people you want to help. And my French, whilst it's good, is not, I don't think, sufficiently nuanced for me to be able to guide somebody to create that level of connection in French, let's say. I would not be able to know whether they had achieved it or not. So in that respect, yes, French is absolutely fine for me for all kinds of, buying houses, doing banking, doing everything. But my business stays in English.
That's interesting. That's yes. The fact that you can function in French is a great thing. I joke that in high school, I took 2 years of Spanish. I was very close to taking 2 years of Spanish 1. So yeah, if I get dropped into a Spanish speaking country, I am out of luck. I might be able to find the bathroom. That would be about it. So, I mean, as you talk about the connections in that of people, we talk, I mean, here at Pedal Stomper, we talk a lot about that video and how that breeds that authentic connection. What is it, I mean, that people that do video can do to make sure that they are authentically connecting with their audience through something like a podcast like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, you're absolutely right. There's no better way to present your business than literally to present it, in visually, verbally, in real life, in real time. There's no better way to present what it's actually going to be all about. And so in that respect, in common with any other way of presenting a business, I think you have to be how you are. There's no point in showing up in one certain way on videos or in following some script that you believe is going to go down well. I mean, the whole point of talking is to create an actual connection with people who are going to resonate well with you for how you are, for who you are, for what you do. And so it's a tricky one, because I realize that appearing in video can be very daunting for a lot of people. I think that overcoming that is so important, because, you do it once, it's scary. You do it twice, it's a bit scary. You do it 3, 4, 5 times, and it's not that scary at all. And I think, like anything, it's something that it is hugely valuable to overcome that, because particularly if you're in the service business, or if you have a founder position within your business where you're somebody who whose views are interesting enough that if you're trying to build a brand-led business where you have views that you want, and values and beliefs that you want to resonate with your future clients, then appearing in video as you are, as you would behave, there can be really no better way of expressing what your business is all about. It's surely one of the strongest ways of building connection and therefore building sales.
You brought up when you mentioned founder there, you made me kind of think of another piece to that. So if someone, let's say I'm the founder and I have someone else that works with me, that does some of the marketing, that does some of the other items, that maybe is an on-camera personality, what's needed to make sure that there's that balance, I guess I would say, between the founder's personality and the whoever's marketing and branding and that other type of stuff? How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, and this is where clarity of purpose and intention is super important. And so at the beginning of any brand strategy piece, one of the sort of early things that we'll always dig into is, what is the relationship supposed to be between you and your brand? Is there a hierarchy? Is it the case that the founder has more brand equity than the brand? Or is it the case that the brand has or needs to develop more brand equity? Is there a transfer to accomplish? And so it's really important to think about where you want to be in the spotlight, where your business needs to be in the spotlight, whether it is for the same reasons or different, and what is the identity of the business all about? And once you've mapped your relationship to the business, then it will become easier to map what relationships other people might have to your business, other people who may be working with you, working within the business. Which parts of that value set are yours? Which parts of the value set belong to the business? And which parts belong to the person who is speaking, right? Because it would be absurd to decide that the person who is acting as the spokesperson for the business has to just be a sort of an identity-free entity, just a voice, just a mouthpiece of the business.
Sure.
There has to be something. There has to be a logical line of connection between the way that this person is presented and the way that the business is presented, and you have to accept that you've got kind of three brands at play there. It's super important to align them.
It makes sense to me too, then, saying, like, as you talk about the brands and making sure that there's that identity to it, it makes sense to me too, to look at that even through processes like hiring. And I mean, there's that to me seems, as you talk about it that way, it's something that needs to be in every piece of the company rather than just the outward facing.
There's a very confusing often confusing relationship between brand and marketing, because often I've spoken about the two things in the same breath several times, even just in our call. And as I've said so, I've kind of double thought in my mind, this is creating a false sense that brand is all about marketing. Absolutely not. Many people who come to brand do so because they want to work on their marketing. But typically, the issues in their brand are way, way, way deeper than the marketing issues. And those are the ones that you want to sort out first, right? Because if we go back to this suggestion that what you're trying to do in your marketing is present as accurate as possible an idea of what the business is really all about, what you're going to deliver, for whom, how it's going to be, what the experience will be, you need to get all of those things straight before you can go about presenting it. And so typically in any kind of brand project, in my view, you simply cannot undertake a brand project without digging into the absolute gubbins of the business in the first place, to look at what is the offer, who is it for, is it the right offer, is it the right price, do we have the right people presenting the offer, does it look the way it's supposed to look, does it feel the way it's meant to feel? So everything needs to come into place in order that you can then put the right shell around it. I often use this analogy of a cake, that your business is like a cake and the marketing is just the icing. Obviously you can't do the icing until you've got the cake, can you? Otherwise, and if you've never tried the cake, then you might very well put the wrong type of icing on it, and then people are going to be horribly disappointed when they buy it, right?
I love that analogy. And it's tough because I am the type of person that can just sit down with a bucket of icing and a spoon. But I totally see. Right. Hence why I would need to run up the side of mountains. No, it totally makes sense to me that yes, that needs to go that that much deeper in order to really set the structure for so many other things that are going to be built around it. That makes perfect sense to me. If someone's getting ready to start their brand journey and figure out what they need to do with that, what's one mistake? What's something that someone should avoid as they start to look at their brand journey, I guess I would say?
What should you avoid? Any reticence to look beneath the surface is always very, very problematic. Right? I mean, I will occasionally come across a business owner and they'll say, no, I just want to work on the marketing. I don't want to talk about the price. I don't want to talk about what we actually sell. I don't want to talk about how we do it. I just want you to help me with the marketing, please. It's not something that I believe is realistic to do. I mean, that is where you really do come into this territory of taking a book, sticking any old cover on it, and then seeing if you can sell more copies. What we're trying to do is create something that people will actually want to buy and enjoy to buy. So if you're thinking that I want to look at my brand, try to forget the idea of getting a nice shiny logo or a nice shiny photo shoot until you've figured out exactly what that's supposed to be all about. And yet it may take a little bit longer. Upfront, will take a lot less long in the long run.
That I love that. That makes sense. I mean, it's put the foundation in before you start building. Don't start building and then try and dig underneath and stick a foundation underneath it.
Yeah. And, that's not to say that your brand can't evolve as your business grows. But at any kind of shift or change in your business, it's always a good time to look again at your brand and think, am I still representing the thing that I set out to represent? Am I still selling the thing that it looks like I'm selling?
That makes wonderful sense. I love that. Speaking of stuff like that, are there any like emerging trends or innovations that you see in like brand voice development that you're personally excited about?
Excited about would be a strong way of putting it, but one thing that's I think that's undeniably having a big impact is the growing adoption of AI. I think that's it's a huge piece with regards to the development of the brand voice, because AI obviously has these capabilities to effectively mimic your voice. You can teach it to sound like you can teach it to write like you. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I mean, I think that's, and I guess the answer is probably somewhere in between the two. I have to say that for me, the fundamental of a brand voice is that it is uniquely expressive of what the person is getting. And so until such time as AI is delivering your service, then it's probably not best to entrust your brand voice to AI. Although, I do accept that for some people, writing, creating content, producing content can be highly problematic. And so I can see that it can certainly serve as a very welcome help. It can lift a bit of the load, but I would be very wary of handing over the load wholesale
Sure.
to computer intelligence.
That makes sense. AI is permeating so many things. And it's interesting. I very much see it as a tool that can help us all work better and faster. Pliers can be used as a hammer, but they aren't the best hammer.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to be shunned by any means. Right. I think it has to be embraced because that's the way the world is going. But it can't. Don't let it replace you, right? I mean, the whole point of being an expert is that you have got expertise. And if you're willing to hand off all of that expertise to AI, then don't be too surprised if you end up being kind of middle of the road in what you're able to express and do.
So if you've got someone that would say that was thinking about starting like a video podcast or something like that, what would be some advice that you would give them from a brand perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it's important in the first place to get clear about why. Why are you doing this? Who is it actually for? And this would be common to any kind of business project at all, effectively. But get really clear before you do anything. Who would be the ideal listener or watcher? And what would you like them to be able to do as a result of it? What transformation is it going to create for that person? Because you're not creating it just in order to be an influencer or because you've got too much time on your hands. You're creating it presumably because you want to make an actual difference in the lives of people. And so you want to get really clear on what is that remit and almost like put it up on the wall, have it there in order that you can always check in am I achieving this? Am I accomplishing the thing that I'm actually here to achieve? And I think all too often, it's tempting to start doing things just because everybody's doing it, because everybody's talking about it, or because somebody proposes to sell it to you. You're like, oh, yes, I'll do that. That's great. And off you go. But think about, is it the right thing at all for my audience? If it is, what do they need it to be like? Look around, see what other people are doing, in order that again, where you fit in, where you stand out, because you want to be at neither polarity. You don't want to be so unique that nobody can understand what on earth you're on about, and you don't want to be so well blended in that nobody can be bothered to listen to you. And so really get clear before you start what it's for, who it's for, and what they're supposed to get from it.
I love it. I love it. It's funny. Whenever someone approaches us on a video project, one of the first questions I ask is why. And inevitably they always say, well, we want to do marketing. I'm like, why? And I keep asking why until they say, well, we need to sell more widgets. And then I'm like, great. So are we doing a video to sell more widgets? And they're like, well, we kind of had this. Oh, I'm like, right. Let's define the why. And then we'll get it all figured out from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next thing that I was going to ask you is, what's your biggest passion outside of your work? And here's where it gets tricky. How does this relate to your work?
So over the last more years, I like to think actually, probably my biggest passion has been trail running effectively. And that's, I'm slightly pained around this because I've had a lasting injury the last couple of years. I'm not running as I would like to do. But I find that if you want to find parallels with running a business, go and start running ultra marathons. There's so many parallels between what you need to be able to achieve as a longer distance runner and as a business owner. In that, it's a journey that, yes, you may be sharing with other people. You are no doubt sharing it with other people, but a lot of the time you're right on your own. You're having to go through things on your own. You're having to handle tough moments and other people are having great moments and vice versa. There's a slight difference in that with an ultramarathon, there's typically ligne d'arrivée, there's typically a finish line, whereas in business, there's often no clear finish line in that sense. But in both cases, you'll set yourself small goals. You'll think, I'll just get to this next peak. I'll get to this next peak. I'll get to this next aid station where I can stop and talk to some people. And so there are such a lot of parallels in the sense that you have to manage your own energy all the way through. You can't just go out 100 miles an hour and then, fall over at the first hurdle. You're in this for the long run. So you need to find ways of making it work. You need to figure out who you don't mind being around, because, you set out to run 50 kilometers with the wrong people. It's a lengthy and painful experience. And so, you really want to get clear.
With the right people, it's a lengthy and painful experience, I would
but it may be more enjoyable.
Right. Well, why make it worse than it has to be?
Well, indeed. You've got to get clear about what sort of an experience you want to have. You've got to get clear about, even you don't have to go and run an ultramarathon. You go and run a 10K. That's also fine. You get clear about what sort of an experience you want to have. And you certainly spend plenty of time inside your own head questioning, why am I doing this? What's this all about? It'll be easier when only I've got to this next. Oh, no, it won't. It'll be harder. Okay, right.
Oh, yeah. Well, to quote Greg LeMond, the cyclist, I always love what he said, he goes, it never gets any easier. You just go faster. And I always liked that one. Looking back, what's a piece of advice that you would give your younger self as you embark on this journey into marketing and branding?
I would have told myself to ask for help sooner. I really would, because I'm quite a problem solver. And I've always, my natural tendency is to think, I'll find a way through this. And I probably will find a way through this. But there's no prize for making your own way through it in the slowest possible way. There's no prize for just sticking at it and spending hours. This is the other thing. I think I've been guilty of this. I see many other business owners doing the same thing, where you just you put in time, you put in hours doing things that are not necessarily high value activities, that don't particularly use the skills and abilities that you have, but they are required by your business. Don't do those things. Like, do the things that you're good at, that people want from you, and that you enjoy. Don't try to reinvent everything.
It's funny because I've been working on a pivot in my own business of that too at the same point. So yes, that one hits home. The last big question I'm going to ask you here is, what are you most proud of in achieving in your career so far? And where's that headed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I'm most proud of? Well, I'm proud to have set up my business and pivoted it entirely actually into brand strategy development and support. Because when I first set up my business, I'll be quite honest, I'm one of those people who, ironic, my business was always in the business of helping other people find the clarity, find the direction, but I left myself at the bottom of the pile. And it took me years to actually find the courage to stop and think, right, okay, it's time that you did this as well. And so having got into the state where I'm doing the work that I came here to do, I'm doing it, this is my sole focus. I'm living in the place where I want to live, doing the work that I want to do, which puts me in a position to be able to authentically support other people to make those same choices. I'm proud to be able to be there, to be honest. That means a lot to me.
That's amazing. That's and the smile that I saw as you started to say that look, I'm here, I'm where I want to be, is just, there's a lot of people that I think that's going to resonate with, and I absolutely love it. Where would you like people to find you if they're listening and would like to reach out to you?
So the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can find me under Jo Cowper on LinkedIn, and that would be ideal.
Wonderful, Jo. I want to thank you for the time today, especially thank you for the insights. I really appreciate it. For everyone watching out there, to me, this is really valuable from the fact that it's something that we all need to take stock in a lot of things in terms of looking at our brand voice and figuring out what we're actually doing and why we're actually doing it, so that way we can show up authentically. That being said, we've got some great guests coming up. Do yourself a favor, make sure you take care of yourself, and if you can, take care of someone else. We'll see you soon.